Good morning to all. I'm Ramya Devi working as Assistant Professor in SNS College of Engineering. Today I'm going to share a small article regarding web service using Jax Rpc. So what are the basic steps for creating the web service and client? First we have to create an interface, code the implementation class, use WS compile to generate WSDL doc, create deployment descriptor file, package the files into a var file, use WS deploy tool to deploy the var file, create a client file to access the web service, use WS compile to generate and compile the web service, compile the client class and run the client. So these are the steps to be followed for creating an JAG web service and a client. So I'm going to talk about how can we build a web server using Jax Rpc, which stands for Java API for XML based remote procedure call. Jax Rpc allows us to create SOAP based web services. SOAP is Simple Object Access Protocol is a messaging protocol that allows different applications built on different platforms to communicate with each other over the internet. With Jax Rpc, you can create web services and clients that can exchange XML based messages. First, we have to define a service endpoint interface which declares the methods the web services exposes, and we have to implement the SCI in a class that contains a business logic, deploy the service to a web server such as Apache Tomcat, and generate a WSDL file to describe the services to clients. How can we define the service endpoint interface? So the service endpoint interface is like a contract that specifies the methods your web service will expose to the outside world. For example, if we want to create a simple calculator service that adds two numbers, the SCI might look something like this. So this calculator interface defines one method add which takes two integers and returns their sum. The important part is that it extends remote and throws remote exception as required by Jax Rpc. And here is an example of a currency conversion. Here also we are extending the remote exception, remote interface, and then we are implementing the exchange values from dollars, euros and yens and throwing the remote exception. Next we have to implement the web service interface. So we create a class that implements this interface. So this class contains a logic for the web service. So this implementation is simple and contains the logic for exchanging the currency values, converting the currency value from one form to the another. And also it just as easily contain more complex logic such as interacting with databases or performing business calculations. So next we have to deploy the same service. To deploy this service on a server like Apache Tomcat, we need to configure deployment descriptors. This involves creating a web.xml file that maps a service to a URL endpoint. We also create a Jax Rpc ri.xml file that specifies the service configuration. An example entry in web.example might look like this. So first we have to write the servlet name and servlet class, and after that in the mapping you have to give the servlet name and also the URL pattern. Our next step is for generating the WSDL. Once a service is deployed, we generate a WSDL file which is crucial because it tells clients how to interact with the web service. WSDL defines things like the available methods, the data types used and where the service is located. You can generate the WSDL using tools like WS Compile, part of the Jax Rpc toolkit. This WSDL file is then shared with clients so they know exactly how to send requests to the service. And then we have to create a client to test the service. Finally, to test the web service, you can create a client application. The client uses the WSDL to understand the service, makes a request to the server and receives a response. Here is an example for the client calls the currency service. So although newer technologies like Jax WS have most replaced Jax Rpc, there are still scenarios where Jax Rpc is used, particularly when working with legacy systems. It offers a standardized structured way to communicate using XML based SOAP services SOAP messages ensuring platform independence. So, creating a web server using Jax Rpc involves defining an interface, implementing the service, deploying it to a server, generating the WSDL, and writing a client to interact with the service. Even though Jax Rpc is a legacy technology, it laid the groundwork for more modern web service frameworks and is still important to understand, especially in environments with older systems. Thank you.